Hi,
Hello,
please introduce yourself.
my name is Greg Storey, and I'm the uh, Chief Marketing Officer at Fabicon.
You have to think about
I
that.
had to think about that for a second. Yeah.
So at some point in your path to becoming the CMO,
Mhm.
you realized that people looked at you and said, oh my God, this guy's in charge. He's leadership.
Mhm.
Do you remember that moment, or was that something that happened in stages?
I think that moment that you described didn't happen here, um, or I don't even think in design that happened way back in the past when I used to run a bunch of coffee shops and kind of worked myself up from being a barista to actually running a store to then running 3 stores in a wholesale operation. And at that point, I think that was a pretty dramatic change from what I was to where I ended up in like a year and a half. And that's where I had that people looking and saying, "Oh my gosh, you're in charge." Um, Otherwise, kind of since then, it's always been a leadership position for me in one way or another.
And in the design sense, becoming a digital design leader, has that been a constant evolution, or do you feel like you made the transition and then you've just been, I don't know, spinning your wheels or holding on to what you had?
I think it's so. I guess I define leadership as somebody who speaks out, someone who leads either by example or pointing something out and saying, "Hey, that's not right," or "This is what's right." Um, I think in that regard, I feel like probably in early 2000 when I started writing about design is, I suppose, when I kind of got in that position. I wasn't an authority. I wasn't necessarily teaching people how to do things, but trying to point out, like I said, things, uh, whatever designs that were great, designers who were great, things that I didn't think were so great. And I think that's kind of where my position has been in this group for a while.
Mm. Along the way, did you get advice, or was this all just picking up stuff along the way?
I think it's picking up stuff along the way. There were definitely people who resonated with me and kind of my own thinking, and that's always been Jeffrey Zoltman, Jason Santamaria, guys like Cameron Mall, Dan Cederholm, uh, Mike Davidson. Way back in the day. So I'd say that I don't know if there was a particular vice as much as trying to trying to be a voice for a lot of people who didn't speak up,
Mhm.
so that when you had people who were coming in and, I don't know, just being disruptive, trolling our little neck of the woods, I always felt compelled to say something, because I knew that others would not for one reason or another. And I felt like, so I suppose if there was anything I kind of gravitated towards it was that.
Is there any one of those people, or maybe somebody else, who's acted as a mentor to you?
Oh man, yeah. Um, Mentors and peers. I mean, on and off, Jeffrey Zeltman was definitely a mentor. He's the one that told me I should quit my job and get into freelance, which is kind of funny because I'd hired him at this job, and so he was basically saying, "You're too good for this place, and your career, your path is bigger than what this place is ever going to be able to do for you. So you really should just quit." Uh, he was definitely a big influence. Guy Tom Dolan, who was a guy who ran a studio called Polychrome in Pasadena, he was definitely an influence in, I suppose, a supportive role in some of those early years of kind of being an outside validation of talent. Someone who wasn't necessarily, I didn't feel like followed everybody else in what they were saying at the same time or at that time. He was somebody who I didn't know, kind of came out of the woods, yet his experience and the work that he had done really helped me get the confidence I needed to be able to say, okay, this combined with guys like Jeffrey Zoltman saying, go out on your own, that's kind of what helped propel that.
And your business experience is really what's driven this, rather than, say, design experience.
Yeah, I'd say where I am today for sure. I've always been someone who started things, So I remember, for example, back in Alaska, where I'm from, and when I was younger, I got involved into remote control cars. That was a big thing back then, and there wasn't really anywhere to congregate with other enthusiasts and to race. And at the time too, I couldn't exactly afford all of the equipment that I needed. And so I decided, all right, I will start my own track and I'll congregate all these people and I'll get everything I need to kind of get the experience, that I want from this. And so with my father's help, we went and got an old, like a department store that had been vacant for a while. We negotiated the use of that every Friday night for, at least a year. It may have gone 2, and got my parents to help kind of run the front office. Register all the racers, get all the money, and then as it grew, got guys to actually run the race, become like race marshals. So this is me as like a freshman in high school, organizing something that turned into, I think we had about 75 to 80 racers a night. We actually had an audience because it was a department store, it was fairly big, and so we got to write up in the paper of like, hey, here's this thing to go do. We had guys driving as far as 150 miles just to race at this track.
Wow.
It just turned into this thing, and so that's kind of been, if something isn't there, go start it. So that's, I suppose, it's part of business, but also part of being an entrepreneur. And that's both of those have been kind of, I'd say, more a part of my path than just pure design.
Right.
I didn't go to school to study design. I studied architecture in high school. I was going to be an architect until I found out that in addition to college, you had to go through like 8 more years. It was like being a doctor. And only then through all of that and being a juryman and that type of thing, did you finally get to design buildings, which to me was the most creative part. And so once I found that out, I was like, all right, screw this. I'm going to go into graphic design. And, I'd always been playing with Macs and all this PageMaker, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, once I kind of turned that avenue down and focused on graphic design, that was a lot easier. But then I studied advertising in college and history, so I didn't go to design school. I just kind of feel like I've always been flanking design as a career, or trying to, I should say. And every time I think I'm going to really get into this and just dive deep, then whatever business opportunity or something else kind of happens, and my focus is there. But design's always a part of it.
So, having taken a non-direct path to becoming who you are, do you think that there are ways for young, potentially great design entrepreneurs or design leaders to find their own path? Or is it clear to them, or do they end up following the same kind of disjointed path that you followed?
I think I've come across 2 paths. I've worked with and I've hired students who came out of design school where they have a lot of, I would call, like tactical experience. They've been kind of paraded through applications and a little bit of history, a little bit of process, but more of how-to stuff. And then I've come across and worked with a lot of people who just taught themselves everything they needed to know along the way and kind of developed more street smarts. So I'd say that there's definitely a place for both. I don't think you have to go to design school, but you still can. You just need to be aware of kind of what you're getting out of it and what you need to augment what you're not being taught in class, and vice versa. I think people who are self-starters, they learn street smarts along the way, right? They get that because they're constantly bumping into or creating problems and mistakes and having to pick themselves back up and fix that. But they're not necessarily getting all the design education, that someone at a school might.
Mm. And the mistakes that you've bumped into along the way, are there any that are super memorable?
Yeah, I mean, they're all the classic stuff. So I remember creating a logo for a trucking association. At their request, they wanted me to redesign their newsletter. This is before the web, right? So redesign their quarterly newsletter and create a logo for them. And so I did the work, and they loved the newsletter, and they said, well, we like the logo, and how much is this? And so I told them $300, and they balked, and they said, well, we'll take the newsletter, we can't take the logo. So I made it clear, and I said, all right, but just so we're clear, this is now my property. Like, I mean, it's always been my property, but I'm retaining the rights for this. You cannot use it. And sure enough, a couple of months later, I found that the newsletter went out and with the logo. And so I had to quickly learn, basically I had to get the guts to go after these guys by myself and say, you owe me $300, you know, and I saw it coming, and you know, miles away, and I wasn't really prepared for when it happened, right? I thought something in the back of my mind said these guys aren't dumb enough, and they did. So that took a couple of really tense phone calls and letters, you know, writing back and forth, but I got my money.
Mm-hmm.
They got the
Congratulations.
logo. Yeah, thank you. Got my money. Otherwise, I'd say a lot of it has to do with communication issues. A lot of the problems, if I look back in the early years, are just communication issues. You know, and I'd say the one that I learned that I had to quickly get over, especially getting into web design, was if I was behind as a designer and if I needed more time, I needed to call the client and tell them right away, not bury myself in a Photoshop sand dune, right? That never works. And it took probably a year or two of just pissing people off in the early days of Airbag, the studio that I started, just pissing off clients, losing a client, like a friend who was a client. It took all of that kind of that pain and stress and tension to realize that communication is more important than design in a design role,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'd say that was a biggie.
And so these mistakes obviously developed a level of confidence for you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you maybe explain a little bit how confidence changed your ability to make better decisions or to be a better leader?
So I think confidence comes through experience, for me anyway. After a while, you start seeing patterns, you start seeing cycles, you start identifying this client is going to be like this, or this contractor is going to be like this, or this employee is going to kind of fit this rule and this kind of mold. So I think after a while, when you start to see those patterns, you through your own experience, and that's been the case for me, is I kind of know how to manage that, like what the expectations are, whether they're communicated or not, and how I needed to change or adapt to help make that relationship as smooth as possible. So that's to start. The second is, even as bad as a project went, or you know, like how it went down or how it ended, nobody tried to kill me. Nobody tried to take my home. Now I know some people who, you know, they've been in worse situations and they found themselves on the wrong side of a lawyer or legal team. But still, I don't know anybody whose life was ultimately changed because of something bad that happened because of the type of work that we do.
Right.
And so I do think that, you know, being level-headed and knowing that it's not that problems don't matter, or, you know, a person's weird requests don't matter. It's just that it's, in the big scheme of things, it's all going to play out. So I just learned to be able to relax and you know, just kind of see how things go, do the best job I can, manage the relationships as best as I can, improve communication constantly, and all along the way, I think that helps with the confidence and knowing what you need to do to improve.
Mm. How would you describe your style of leadership?
I would say it's probably hands off. I mean, I don't know how many descriptions there are of styles, but I don't micromanage people. I may micromanage a design tweak just to get it right, but I don't. I'm more interested in what my business partner Greg Coy says: throwing people in the pool, trying to give them all the tools and the support they need, but really trying to push people to get their own confidence and get their own kind of like 2 feet and stand up. So try to lead by example.
Do you think your team would describe you the same way, or do you think they have a different perspective?
I would hope they would describe me that way. Yeah, because I mean, we've come across people who, I suppose the opposite of that would be micromanaging people, right? This is what you need to be working on right now. This is how you need to be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even the type that just, they're not seeing it, so they just, get out of the way. I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'd say that there's some of that I probably did early on, but I'm really trying not to do that. I think it just builds stronger people.
Right.
It also, you'll find out quickly if those people are going to be able to do this or not,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so rather than taking 5 years to figure out if that's a really good person on your team, you'll find that out in a year or two, right? I think it's valuable.
You've just given us a tour of your office space, which is gorgeous, by the way.
Thanks.
Can you reflect on why office space is important in this day and age, that we can literally be working from home or have virtual teams, and
Mm-hmm.
what kind of role does the office space play in design and design work?
So when I say we, my group, my team, the people I've been working with for the last almost 10 years, there have been times where we were completely remote, all virtual, times when we were half remote, half virtual, or half remote, half in an office, and just in the last 2 years here in Austin, where we're all in an office. I think it depends on the person, but I do think whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, getting together in a room with your team, it improves communication. You can have Slack and IM and phones and all that other kind of stuff, but nothing beats the speed of sound, right? My ability to just, hey Richard, what do you think of this? As opposed to typing and then I gotta send you a screenshot or call you or like whatever. I do think it helps build communication. It helps build a group, whatever that dynamic might be. It's still going to be kind of like us as a group, and that's hard to get virtually.
Right.
I do think that the office provides a place for you to go, a place for you to kind of flip that switch and say, I'm at work now, and also to be able to, more importantly, switch that off and say, I'm going home now, right? And then in terms of how the office and its importance to design, I think that's just a matter of what you surround yourself with. How you choose to lay things out, decorate your office. We have lots of books, we have old computers, we have cool stuff to look at. And it's not to create the hip office per se, but create things that are nice to look at, might inspire you, that type of thing.
How long has Happy Cog been around for now?
Well, Happy Cog's been around since 1999.
Mm-hmm.
I started my own studio, Airbag Industries, in 2005. I became a Happy Cog office in 2009, and we were in California, and we've been here in Austin for about 2.5 years.
So now that you've had almost over a decade in this space, what do you think the future holds for you as a design leader and for the company?
I think with the ever expanding array of devices and things that are going to not just access information but display it, I think that's just going to provide an ever-changing landscape of both opportunity as a designer, but also opportunity in business. It's also, to me, becoming more these devices that we have and these different experiences where you're not just sitting at a computer interacting with things. I think those are going to become more important than some of the stuff we've been working on. Where brands and companies and groups, tribes of people will congregate first on your phones or their like devices, and these other things kind of become accessories to the experience. So by that I mean, I think we're going to be designing, towards that core experience of not a store, not an office, not a space, but that's going to become your phone or something that you have on you all the time. Websites and other things that used to be traditionally number one. Not only are those going to be like accessories, but by accessories I mean they may take on a different shape, a different look, kind of like an eclectic house where the rooms are different, right? And they appeal to different sensibilities or different groups or different themes. And that, I think, that excites me because we have more devices, more things to design for, but we also have smaller audiences for each of these things that we're going to have to design for. And so while you may have an iconic brand or logo or whatnot, I think, in the future, your experience with the brand may be very different than mine, and that's just a matter of our tastes. And that's design, I think, not only will help propel that kind of thinking, but there's going to be a lot of work to do, to make that happen.
We're certainly going to be busy.